At the heart of this tragic tale are two sisters, Jessica and Cassandra Lawrence. They have been rivals since childhood. Cassandra, the elder of the two, had always been the golden girl, beautiful, successful, and married to the charming and accomplished architect Dominic Blunt. Their union was the envy of Mill Haven, seemingly the perfect marriage that everyone aspired to emulate. Jessica and Cassandra were born into a family with modest financial means. Their father was a local fisherman, and their mother was a school teacher. From an early age, it was clear that the sisters were as different as night and day. Cassandra, with her gentle nature, was the pride of her parents. She excelled academically, was a teacher's pet, and seemed to navigate the social waters of Mill Haven with ease. Her path in life seemed predetermined. She planned to attend college, find a wonderful job, and marry a good man to start a family. Jessica was her opposite. From the moment she learned to walk, there was a wildness in her that intrigued and unsettled those around her. While Jessica was just as intelligent as her sister, her academic achievements were overshadowed by her rebellious spirit and desire to break boundaries. As they grew older, the differences between the sisters became increasingly evident. Cassandra pursued a degree in education, following in her mother's footsteps, while Jessica floundered between various majors, never finding her place. It was during this time that Jessica's manipulative tendencies began to emerge. She always found a way to get out of trouble, using her wit and charm to exploit situations to her advantage. Jessica's relationships were always intense but short-lived. It seemed that she enjoyed the chaos of new romances, only to grow bored once the initial excitement wore off. This pattern left a trail of broken hearts and disgruntled ex-partners, only solidifying her reputation as Mill Haven's bad girl. Cassandra Lawrence returned to her hometown after college and quickly caught the attention of Dominic Blunt, a rising star in the world of architecture. Dominic came to Mill Haven to oversee the restoration of the town's historic lighthouse but soon found himself enchanted by the serene beauty of the town, both its landscape and Cassandra herself. His courtship was swift and passionate, culminating in a fairy tale wedding that was the talk of the town for months. Dominic's career continued to thrive, and soon he and Cassandra began living in a beautiful ocean view home. Their life together seemed like a dream. But beneath the surface of their perfect marriage, cracks began to appear. Cassandra started to yearn for something more. She had given up her dream of travel and adventure to settle down in Mill Haven, and a part of her resented the sacrifices she made for her marriage. Dominic, in turn, struggled with his own demons. The pressure from his high-profile career and the expectations of small-town life weighed heavily on him. He loved Cassandra deeply, but there were moments when he felt suffocated by this ideal. It was during this delicate time that Jessica once again entered their lives. Having spent years moving from city to city, she returned to Mill Haven, claiming she wanted to reconnect with her roots. In reality, she was running away from yet another failed relationship and mounting debts, seeking refuge in the one place she knew would accept her. Cassandra, always the loving sister, welcomed Jessica with open arms, offering her a place to stay until she got back on her feet. However, as Jessica adapted to life in the Blunt household, the dynamics between the three of them began to change for the worse. The stage was set for a drama that would shake Mill Haven to its core, forever altering the lives of everyone involved. At first, her presence seemed to breathe new life into Cassandra and Dominic's relationship. Evenings were filled with laughter and memories as the sisters caught up on lost time, and Dominic played the role of the attentive husband. But as days turned into weeks, Jessica's true intentions began to surface. Her gaze lingered on Dominic a moment too long, and her casual touches grew more frequent and purposeful. She found reasons to spend time alone with him, asking for help with her car, seeking advice on job applications, or simply catching him in the kitchen late at night when Cassandra had already gone to bed. Initially oblivious to Jessica's advances, Dominic found himself increasingly drawn to her vibrant personality. While Cassandra was stable and predictable, Jessica was spontaneous and exciting. She listened with enthusiasm to his architectural projects, asking insightful questions that made him feel truly understood. In those moments, Dominic felt a spark he hadn't experienced in years. Dominic was a man of principle, devoted to his wife and the life they had built together. He tried to distance himself from Jessica, finding excuses to spend more time in the office or taking on additional projects that kept him away from home. However, Jessica was not so easily deterred. She recognized the inner turmoil in Dominic's eyes and perceived it as a challenge rather than an obstacle. She began to weave a delicate web of seduction, playing on his insecurities and unfulfilled desires. One evening, when Cassandra was attending a school board meeting, Jessica arranged what seemed to be an innocent dinner with Dominic. She cooked his favorite dish, opened a bottle of fine wine, and created an atmosphere of intimacy that was hard to resist. As they talked late into the night, Jessica skillfully steered the conversation toward Dominic's passions and dreams, areas where she knew Cassandra could never truly connect with him. Dominic felt a surge of emotions, flattery, desire, and overwhelming guilt. He stammered in response, trying to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Jessica had already sensed her advantage. She leaned in closer, her hand brushing against his. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be truly understood, to be with someone who sees you for who you really are? The tension in the room became palpable. Dominic knew he should leave. That he needed to put an end to this dangerous game before it went too far. But something held him in place, caught in the gravitational pull of Jessica's charm. When Jessica's lips met his in a passionate kiss, Dominic's resistance crumbled. In that moment, the foundation of his marriage began to crack, setting off a chain of events that would lead to unimaginable tragedy. Their fleeting passion quickly blossomed into a full-fledged affair, and Jessica and Dominic found increasingly creative ways to be together without arousing Cassandra's suspicions. Their meetings varied from hurried encounters in Dominic's office to carefully planned business trips that allowed them to evade the watchful eye of Mill Haven. Jessica reveled in the thrill of their forbidden romance. Each secret meeting fueled her sense of triumph over her sister. For Dominic, the affair was a mix of excitement and self-loathing. Each encounter left him feeling both exhilarated and torn by guilt. Jessica, being a master of manipulation, knew exactly how to keep Dominic ensnared. She played the role of the ideal lover, alternating between the persona of a passionate seductress and a vulnerable, fragile person. She listened to his complaints about work and his unfulfilled ambitions, offering the understanding and approval he so desperately needed. "I've never met anyone like you, Dominic," she whispered during their intimate moments. "You deserve so much more than this small town can offer you." Her carefully chosen words planted the seeds of discontent in Dominic's mind about his life with Cassandra. She painted vivid pictures of a future they could build together, a life full of excitement and passion, free from the constraints of small-town living. Dominic increasingly felt the internal discord between his growing feelings for Jessica and his loyalty to Cassandra. The double life was beginning to take its toll, manifesting in mood swings and irrational behavior that did not go unnoticed by his wife. At home, Dominic's guilt was expressed in a mixture of emotional distance and excessive self-doubt. There were days when he could barely meet Cassandra's gaze, and others when he showered her with affection, driven by remorse. He threw himself into work, taking on more projects than ever, using his career as an escape and a justification for his frequent absences. Jessica, in turn, played the role of the caring sister. She engaged in long conversations with Cassandra, pretending to be interested in her everyday life while secretly relishing her deception. There were moments when a flicker of guilt crossed Jessica's face, a brief realization of the pain she was inflicting on her sister, but these moments were quickly suppressed, overshadowed by her desire to be with Dominic and her deep need to finally eclipse Cassandra. As the affair progressed, the risks they took grew. They began meeting in more public places, their need for each other overshadowing their caution. There were times when a neighbor nearly caught them in an embrace, and Cassandra's colleagues saw them having dinner in a nearby town. Each close call only intensified their relationship. The danger became part of the allure. But as weeks turned into months, the strain of their deception began to show. Once a vibrant romance, Dominic now felt he was constantly on edge. Guilt consumed him, negatively impacting his work and relationships with friends and family. He began to doubt whether the passion he felt for Jessica was worth the destruction of the life he had built with Cassandra. Jessica, sensing Dominic's internal struggle, doubled her efforts to keep him interested. She began demanding more of his time, and her declarations of love grew more assertive. Her manipulations became more blatant, playing on his feelings of guilt and desires in equal measure. The situation reached its critical point, and neither Jessica nor Dominic realized that their carefully constructed lie was about to collapse. The truth, as is often the case, was quietly surfacing, ready to shatter the lives of everyone involved. While Jessica and Dominic were consumed by their passionate affair, Cassandra was slowly piecing together the scattered fragments of a puzzle she didn't want to solve. At first, the changes were minor: the lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on Dominic's clothes, quiet phone calls that ended when she entered the room, and an emotional distance that seemed to grow with each passing day. Cassandra, ever the optimist, initially attributed these changes to work stress or a midlife crisis. She tried to bridge the widening gap between them by planning romantic dinners and weekends, but she was met with Dominic's indifference. Her sister Jessica ironically became her confidant during this time, offering sympathetic ears and reassurances that only drove the knife of betrayal deeper. But as weeks turned into months, Cassandra could no longer ignore the nagging voice in her head. She began to pay closer attention to the inconsistencies in Dominic's stories about late nights at the office and meetings out of town. She noticed how Jessica's gaze followed Dominic across the room, a fiercely concealed attraction evident in her eyes. Once, while doing laundry, Cassandra found a matchbox from a hotel in a neighboring town, wedged in the pocket of Dominic's jacket, a hotel that she knew was nowhere near his usual business haunts. This discovery sent a shiver down her spine. The physical evidence made it impossible to continue denying her worst fears. Torn between confronting her suspicions and the fear of what she might uncover, Cassandra found herself in a state of constant anxiety. She began to distance herself from friends and colleagues, unable to bear the thought of sharing her doubts and making them a reality. Her nights were plagued by nightmares, and she kept a hawk-like watch on Dominic and Jessica, searching for any sign that would confirm or dispel her fears. In a moment of desperation, Cassandra even considered hiring a private detective, but the thought of strangers intruding into her personal life felt too heavy to bear. Instead, she decided to meet with Dominic and Jessica separately, hoping that one of them would crack under pressure and reveal the truth. Little did Cassandra know that her decision to seek the truth would set off a chain of events leading to a confrontation far more devastating than she could have ever imagined, forever altering the course of their lives. The day of reckoning arrived on a tumultuous autumn afternoon. She spent the morning preparing herself for this moment, rehearsing what she would say and how she would remain calm and composed in the face of possible heartbreak. When Dominic walked in, shaking the rain from his coat, he was met with the sight of his wife standing in the room, her face a mask of barely restrained emotion. The tension in the air was palpable, and he immediately understood that their carefully concealed lie was about to come crashing down. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Despite all your efforts, I know about you and Jessica." Color drained from Dominic's face as his mouth opened and closed, struggling to find words. In that moment of stunned silence, Cassandra saw the truth written on his face, and her last hope evaporated. "How long?" she demanded, raising her voice. "How long have you been sleeping with my sister?" Dominic's shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew it was pointless to deny it any longer. "Cassandra, I'm so sorry, it just happened." Cassandra interrupted him with a bitter laugh. "You were never going to." "What, did you trip and fall into her bed? How could you do this?" The dam broke, and months of hidden suspicion and pain rushed out. Cassandra hurled accusations and questions at Dominic, her voice echoing throughout the house. Dominic, for his part, could only stand there and swallow her fury, weakly apologizing, knowing there was nothing that could stop the wave of her anger. When their argument reached its climax, the front door opened, and Jessica walked in, stopping at the sight before her. For a moment, the three of them stood frozen in a tableau of betrayal and guilt. "Jessica, how lovely of you to join us. We were just discussing your affair with my husband." Jessica's eyes darted between Cassandra and Dominic, her mind racing to find a way out of the situation. Dominic, torn between the two sisters, tried to intervene. "Please, can we just calm down and talk about this rationally?" His words only redirected Cassandra's fury. In a fit of rage, Cassandra grabbed a vase from the coffee table and hurled it across the room, narrowly missing Dominic's head. She crashed against the wall, the cracking sound underscoring her words. The noise seemed to pull Jessica out of her defensive stance. For the first time, a semblance of remorse flickered across her face. Dominic and Jessica exchanged glances of helpless guilt before slowly making their way to the door. When it slammed shut behind them, Cassandra collapsed onto the couch, her body shaking with sobs. The life she knew, the future she had planned, all of it crumbled to dust in a matter of minutes. As the storm raged outside, a whirlwind of emotions swirled in Cassandra's mind: anger, shame, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss. At that moment, she made a decision that would set in motion the final tragic act of this twisted drama. She headed to the bar. The bartender, an older man named Hank, watched with increasing concern as Cassandra brought glass after glass to her lips. He had seen plenty of customers drowning in their sorrows, but something about the wild look in Cassandra's eyes made him nervous. "Another?" Cassandra demanded, her words slightly slurring. Hank hesitated, but the firmness in her gaze compelled him to excuse himself from refusing her. He poured her another whiskey, silently promising himself that this would be her last drink. As the night wore on, the bar emptied, leaving Cassandra alone with her thoughts and drinks. The alcohol dulled the sharp edges of her pain, replacing them with a bitter resolve. Around midnight, Hank gently suggested that it was time for her to go home. "Would you like me to call a taxi, miss?" Cassandra waved him off, rummaging through her purse for her car keys. "I'm fine," she insisted. "I just need to get out of here." Hank reached out to stop her, but Cassandra was already stumbling toward the door. When she stepped out into the parking lot, Cassandra was able to start the car. The engine roared into the silence of the night. She drove out of the parking lot, her vision blurring and her reactions slowing to a dangerous degree. The winding coastal road stretched out before her, the strip of asphalt barely visible in the moonlight. As she drove, chaos reigned in Cassandra's mind: anger at the betrayal of Dominic and Jessica, shame for not noticing the signs earlier, fear of the uncertain future that now lay ahead of her. The speedometer gradually climbed as she pressed down on the accelerator. Disaster struck at a particularly sharp turn. Cassandra's dulled reflexes failed her, and she took the turn too quickly. She felt the car beginning to skid, the tires screaming against the asphalt. She realized her mistake, but it was too late. Cassandra soared into the air, then was consumed by darkness as the car plunged off the edge of the cliff, tumbling and falling onto the sharp rocks below. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to appear on the horizon when Officer Liam Murphy received a call: a runner had stumbled upon a wrecked car down at the Whispering Cliffs, a well-known stretch of coastline. Murphy, an experienced member of the small Mill Haven police force, felt a surge of dread as he made his way to the scene. The sight that met him was grim. The car, a silver sedan, was barely recognizable, crumpled beyond repair from the impact. While the rescue team worked to extricate the vehicle from its precarious position, Murphy began the sad task of piecing together the events that led to the disaster. The license plate, miraculously intact, quickly identified the car as belonging to Cassandra Blunt. Murphy felt his heart drop. He knew Cassandra, like most residents of Mill Haven. The thought of delivering this news to her family weighed heavily on him. As the morning wore on and the full gravity of the tragedy became clear, whispers began to circulate in the town: Cassandra Blunt was dead in what appeared to be a drunk driving accident. It seemed impossible, completely out of character for her, the woman everyone knew as responsible and composed. Detective Sarah Watson, called from the nearest town to lead the investigation, sensed that there was more to this story. Her keen eye noticed details that didn't quite add up: the lack of skid marks on the road, indicating that there had been no attempt to brake, the strange angle of the vehicle that had been pushed off the cliff, and the fact that Cassandra had been drinking alone, a situation her friend insisted she would never do. When Watson arrived at the Blunt residence to deliver the news, she was struck by the palpable tension in the air. Dominic Blunt's reaction to his wife's death seemed oddly muted, with an undertone of guilt, and the presence of Jessica Lawrence, Cassandra's sister, in the house at such an early hour raised immediate alarm bells. In the days following Cassandra's death, Detective Watson immersed herself in the investigation, peeling back layers of the seemingly idyllic Mill Haven to uncover the hidden storm beneath. Her first step was to piece together Cassandra's final hours, which led her to the Rusty Anchor Bar and its bartender, Hank. Hank's account of Cassandra's state on the night of her death painted a picture of a woman in deep emotional turmoil. She drank as if there were no tomorrow. "I tried to stop her from driving," he told Watson, guilt etched on his weary face. This testimony sharply conflicted with everything Watson had heard about Cassandra from friends and colleagues. The woman they described was cautious and responsible, not someone who would drink to the point of losing control and then get behind the wheel. The detective's suspicions deepened. Next on Watson's radar were Dominic Blunt and Jessica Lawrence. Their behavior after Cassandra's death was, to say the least, peculiar. Instead of mourning separately, they seemed to seek support from each other. Their interactions were marked by meaningful glances and whispers that abruptly stopped when others approached them. A breakthrough occurred when Watson interviewed Cassandra's close friend, Olivia Chen. At first, Olivia was reluctant to speak ill of the dead or cause further pain to the family, but as Watson gently pressed her, the walls of tension cracked. Cassandra confided her secrets to me just a few days before it happened, she admitted, her voice trembling. She suspected that Dominic was cheating on Cassandra with Jessica. This revelation shed new light on the entire case. Watson immediately began to verify this information, delving into Dominic and Jessica's recent activities. Bank documents revealed suspicious transactions, hotel bookings, and expensive gifts that coincided with times when Dominic claimed to be on business trips. As the evidence mounted, Watson summoned Dominic and Jessica for separate interrogations. Under the relentless questioning from the detective, their carefully prepared alibis began to crumble. Jessica was the first to break. "Yes, we had an affair," she confessed, tears streaming down her face. "Cassandra found out that night, and we had a huge fight. But I swear, we didn't know she had left the house after we did." Dominic, faced with Jessica's confession, finally admitted that they had an affair, but he vehemently denied any involvement in Cassandra's death. "We made a terrible mistake," he said, his voice hollow with regret. "But I loved Cassandra. I would have never wanted this." Watson believed they were telling the truth about not being directly responsible for Cassandra's death, but she knew their actions had set off a chain of tragic events. The detective's report painted a clear picture: Cassandra, losing her balance after discovering her husband's infidelity with her own sister, sought solace in alcohol. Her decision to get behind the wheel in that state, while ultimately her own, was a direct consequence of the emotional trauma caused by Dominic and Jessica's betrayal. Ultimately, no criminal charges were brought against anyone for Cassandra's death, but in the court of public opinion, Dominic and Jessica were already condemned. The truth about their affair spread through Mill Haven like wildfire, forever tarnishing their reputations and ensuring that Cassandra's death would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Over time, the sharp pain from these events began to fade, but their impact on Mill Haven remained. The town eventually regained its outward appearance of calm, but its residents carried with them the knowledge that beneath the tranquil surface of small-town life lay passions and secrets that could erupt with deadly force. The tragedy of Cassandra Blunt forever changed the soul of Mill Haven, leaving an unbearable mark on all who called it home.